ado, I'll get straight into what we've been all waiting to talk about. So largely for specific areas, namely what is climate crisis. I'm not going to use climate change as I already sounded everyone. Why the focus on it now? So that's a very relevant and important question that all of us need to address. And how does the climate crisis affect us? What are the visible signs that we are seeing as it gets into more and more full-blown form? And last but not the least, what can we do to reduce the challenge? So thank you very much, BIMTech, Abhijit ji, Priyadarshini. It's really a pleasure and honor to come back to BIMTech. Had real pleasure to work with you at all levels. It's been 2 years since I came and spoke on that NatCat forum, and I made some noises that, well, NatCat is good enough, but we have to move towards climate change because NatCat tends to blame everything to act of God rather than act of humans. And that's what climate change and climate crisis is all about. I having just gotten a sense of the people around the table, other than my friend Arup, realized that I don't need to get into minor or small issues, but in the given time, I'd like to quickly run through a few thoughts that bother me. So basically, when we talk of climate crisis, I go back to, while I'm not a science student since I left school, but we have to focus on science because that's the only way we can counter all the naysayers. And essentially, three things come out, which I borrow from Scientific American. One is the weather systems, the other is the ecosystems, and the third is human habitations. These are all things which get rattled by the crisis. And it's not just humans. There are a whole lot of other species, flora and fauna around us, which are going through the extinction, which tantamounts to virtually the sixth extinction that our planetary system is currently facing. So basically, this form of extinction or this format of extinction is all human-driven, hence Anthropocene. So it's all man-made. And what is happening is, ever since the Industrial Revolution, we have pumped so much of heat and bad air, if I may use that phrase, into the environment that the planet and the planetary systems are responding. So I'll borrow a number which shocks you when you hear it first time, and every time I hear it, I'm shocked. So Bill McKibben, he's one of the foremost, I would say, climate thinker and activist. You'll see his name writ all over. He's an author, speaker, pusher on all these efforts. And he came out with a number that every day, the amount of heat or whatever energy that we pump into the planetary system is equivalent to 400,000 Hiroshima-sized bombs every day. So you can imagine what could the reaction be. And we are sitting coolly in air conditioning in very cozy environments, occasionally thinking and talking about what is happening around us. And we believe things will go all right. Our politicians make all kinds of noises and then go to sleep. But there is something serious brewing. The Nobel Committee earlier this week announced the physics award, and two scientists particularly, not to undermine the third one, particularly Dr. Manabe and Dr. Hasselman, both in their one of them close to getting 90, another one in 80s. It's phenomenal, the amount of 60, 70 years of scholarly work they have done. There cannot be anything that you should undermine which is not science that has now come before us. So any naysayers should, should be pushed aside, and we shouldn't be defensive about it. What I also want to touch upon is very quickly, there is a global ramification and there is a ramification for our own country. And Prateek ji was asking me about my blogs. A lot of that more recently has been focused on that. So what's happening in the Arctic and the Antarctic? There are refrigerators. We are attacking them, and it will also cause us severe grief. But also what is happening is in our close neighborhood, which is the third pole, and which has the most amount of frozen water or ice or snow, whatever you call it. And we are seeing these glaciers melt. These glaciers feed river systems right from Central Asia to South Asia to Southeast Asia to China. And approximately, I mean, each time I see different numbers, but the number of people who could get affected can be as close as 2 billion as the global population touches 8 billion. So with that, you're seeing changes in ocean currents, you're seeing jet streams, you're seeing winds and hurricanes, all that getting impacted. But what is happening in India? Very quickly, I want to run through some of those things. Heat and humidity. Now, the northern India or the Indo-Gangetic plains are going to be the worst affected. The place where BIMTech, unfortunately, is located. And this is not wishful thinking. This is scientific studies which is bringing this out. So one side, you have rivers initially flooding, then drying, and then a crisis, and people running into cities and overrunning them, and no army and no police can manage it. No form of insurance can deal with it. You have heat and humidity also following, and that will trigger serious problems for particularly circulatory and neuro forms of health challenges. And there is already increasing amount of those incidences, and our media keeps quiet about it. Either they don't want to talk about it or they don't understand it. Third is the pollution. The amount of biodiversity damage, and construction, cement, auto, industrial emissions, NTPCs, coal power plants, and whatever else, whatever that you see there is we saw reports about a month and a half ago, and from, again, very solid scientific background about how lifespans in northern India could be cut by an average of 9 years. Now, this is not a laughing stock. In any other country, the agitated people would have started attacking their politicians. I'm not saying you go and do that, but what I'm saying is, we can't. This is just a barometer of how casual we are about such things. I've been talking to insurers, I've been talking to actuaries, and nobody's really waking up to the situation that, okay, health insurance premiums have to change. Employee benefits, what are people doing to ensure that employees are not unduly exposed, not their families, to all these emissions? On the West Coast, the famous author Amitav Ghosh, who I've had the pleasure of knowing personally over the last 40 plus years, I've seen how he has evolved his thought process, and he's been warning again and again about how basically there will be increasing incidences of cyclones, not just on the East Coast, but on the West Coast. And Bombay is a sitting duck. It will have serious issues in the form of, which can replicate a Fukushima kind of a situation. He says you have 2 nuclear power plants sitting there. You have them at virtually the sea level. There is a rising sea level. If you have a major cyclone and, God forbid, an earthquake or something, or a tsunami, you have a Fukushima. And there is nothing that you can do to ensure the exit of all the people. Everyone will try and get into their cars or jump onto the local train and go out of Mumbai, but everyone will be trapped. It could be one of the biggest human disasters that the world has seen. We saw Gulam getting into a Shaheen mode. Now, the origin was on the East Coast, and suddenly, after coming to the West Coast and heading towards the Middle East, it suddenly turned back into another format as Shaheen. And knowledgeable scientists, some of them who I know personally, are saying that this is going to be a regular phenomenon. Now, so as insurers or reinsurers, what the hell are we doing about it? So Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, these are the big cities, but all these coastal towns and cities where you continue having, the dream property sales all the time. What are we building this for? You're building a coastal highway, you're building great properties on the waterfront. Everyone wants to stay on the waterfront. Everyone is willing to insure them as long as they get their premiums. Everyone is willing to reinsure them without putting a foot down saying, bloody hell, this is not something we are going to do. So climate refugees, climate bankruptcies, we're seeing these again and again. We are seeing insurers, whether these are underwriters or investors, doing crazy things all across. So we've seen the American insurers of all the players are the craziest of all. And thankfully, with the departure of Mr. Trump, we are seeing some rationality return as right from SEC downwards. There's a lot of activism, and the street activism is pushing Mr. Biden every time he's seen as soft. You may have the principles of responsible investments and the principles of sustainable insurance in play, but these are still very optional and they are not mandatory. As a result, insurers are taking it very lightly. Share Action, which is a name that you should hear and register, is one of the most eminent institution in building. It's already created. And I've had the pleasure of talking to two of their foremost frontline thinkers about what is happening. Recently, I went through a report where they've analyzed world's 70 top insurers and reinsurers, and they've analyzed them on several fronts: biodiversity, ecology, human rights, and many such things which are not part of our balance sheets, not part of our accounting. The IAIS, with due respect, and the IFRS have not even included them into a sustainability accounting format. So where the hell are we going because of that? So what's happening is Share Action rated all these 70 companies. There was no one at AAA. There was no one at AA. A lot of companies ended up in EEE. So you can realize how poor we may be, howsoever committed we may be in terms of the Net Zero Insurance Alliance or whatever that we tom-tom about. So that's where the world is headed. So we have health issues, we have asset issues, we have large productivity issues. In India, for instance, whenever I talk to my friends in the regulatory environment and people who are good thinkers, they don't even talk about ESG. Some of them even wonder what is ESG about and what has that to do with insurance. So this is the world we are living in. There's going to be a serious reputation issue. So people are going to boycott so-called strong balance sheet insurers and reinsurers who are not delivering. And we have the LIC listing coming. And I would love to see which corporate governance and ESG-driven investor gets excited about investing in LIC, because LIC, with due respect, it acts like a sovereign fund. And LIC is the biggest investor in NTPC, in Coal India, and many others, including ITC. So it's like an oxymoron. You're working to support the well-being of people. They've done some immense good things like the other insurers. But this duality is shocking. And it's high time we wake up. And if they don't wake up, we need to, as whether it's public policy or popular whatever pushback, need to make those noises and get them back on track. I can go on and on. This has warmed me enough, but I'd rather hold back and let all of you speak. Thank you very much, Prateek.